Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And as Ben said, yes, very much welcome any questions. Please ask and interrupt as we go through, because we had some really good conversation at the end of the last one. So I'm more than happy to answer questions as we go through. So I'm Sarah Clarke, for those of you who don't know. I'm the co-chair of the National Network of Parent Care Forums. I also look after the South East region and help support them. And I'm also a joint CEO of my local Parent Carer Forum. The Parent Care Forums, for those that you don't know, we all have to have children and young people aged between 0 to 25 who have any type of SEND. Next slide, please. So we're a membership organisation. We have over 115,000 members, parent carers and families on our membership board, and they feed into our local parent care forums, which match your local authorities. And we're broken up then into regions, which match those of the DFE. For some parent care forums, we have a little bit of complexity because the NHS maps don't quite map with the DFE maps, so some forums have to work with multiple ICSs and that sort of thing, so it can be quite a complex. One of the things that I love about parent care forums is we're solution led, so we look at the themes of what's going on in particular local areas, what the lived experience is, and then we feed that in through our strategic partners across the board. Next slide, please. As we discussed earlier, the 2014 Act, everybody was in agreement that it was a really good idea. Everybody loved the principles behind it, but the implementation and the unintended consequences that came out of that weren't expected, and it hasn't actually had the right outcomes that everybody was hoping it would have for our children and young people. Next slide, please. Next one, please. Has it come through?
Hi, Sarah, sorry.
That's right. That's what my internet does. That's why I was asking you to do it.
There we go.
Fabulous. So some of the key things that families tell us that didn't work out of the law, thank you, is around the co-production and not confrontation. So everyone talks around how the system is very confrontational, and that can be around getting professional advice, the finances. It's not a system that runs smoothly, and the bits don't really understand what the other part is doing. So it's really important to our families that it is person-led, that it is meeting the needs of the young people that need the support, and it's not joint. The joint working is done together, that everybody is on the same page, they understand their key responsibilities, and they're working together to get the best outcomes for our children and young people. Next slide, please. So some of the issues, I'm not going to dwell on these because I think we're all here because we understand that there are issues, that the implementation of the previous one didn't work very well, and that we want to move the programme forward. So there is lots of issues, as we're well aware, around workforce and getting retention, around who pays for what, understanding the responsibilities and making sure that everybody works together and the system is smooth and the journey through it is equal. So at the moment we have a bit of a postcode lottery depending on the provisions, and that can lead to confrontation within the system. Next slide, please. So what we'd like to change is we'd like to see an equal embedded co-production. So working with your children and young people and your families around how you can support the needs of that individual to making sure that they have the best outcomes. Minimum standards. We're hoping that that will reduce the postcode lottery, that everybody understands which bit does what and when, and that accountability, which is really important. So, for example, not everybody under the local authority has the legal responsibility around educational healthcare plans, but it's schools that are implementing those plans. And there's a mismatch on how we can hold the different parts of the system to account. And it's really important that the workforce is knowledgeable and that they understand the needs of our children and young people and what good looks like across SEND. So we hear lots around social care, and everybody understands what good looks like for social care, but it's not really recognised across the SEND system about what a good SEND system looks like for our children and young people. Next slide, please. So within that plan, we want to see the early intervention and how that support prevents families from going into crisis. It's really important that the national standards help support that, and that families really understand the process which they go through, what they can expect at which different level, and how they can access all of those services to ensure that their children don't go into crisis. The next slide, please. The bits that families are really concerned about, and we have lots of contrasting views. So we collate views from across England, and they feed into the work that we do. But it's those, the tricky trigger points are around like tailored lists for schools. We have lots of families that say they need support in understanding what schools are suitable to meet their needs. And then we also have families that are suspicious of these lists and actually want to choose the schools themselves. So it's finding that balance around how those lists are going to be set up. The best way would be to be co-producing those with your family so that the local area understands the needs of the children that are coming through the system and the needs of those individuals on those tailored lists, so that we get a much better matching of placements. The other one is that's quite tricky to do as well is the mediation process. So again, that's very different nationally. It's different systems do it different ways and have different outcomes. So it's around making sure that those mediation tools are embedded, that they're equal, that they actually have drivers that mark the outcomes, and that we understand the outcomes of those mediation, and we can prevent tribunals. Not that we should ever restrict families from going to tribunal, but more that we've come to an agreed resolution that meets the needs of those children without having to go to tribunal, and reducing the time lags that tribunals create for our children and young people. Next slide, please. So there are two parts to this as well. So we have our families that are in crisis now, and we need to make sure that what we are doing as well alongside the change programme is that those families that are in crisis are getting support and some of their needs are being met, and doing the best that we can for those individuals. We also want to make sure that any work that's done through the change programme is going to make the change that we want, embed that culture change around co-production, meeting the needs of the local area, and making sure that the individual's needs are met and we have the best outcomes that we possibly can for our children and young people. Next slide, please. So SEND is everybody's responsibility, and I think if you get it right for our SEND young people, that actually it's right for lots of others. So quick wins that you can do around, I don't know, some of the transitions that our young people face, understanding their timetable before they go back to school will actually suit everybody else in that class, not just those with SEND, and help reduce those transitions. It's really important that our children feel belonged, and that they belong, and that they are included, and therefore, they have a right as everybody else does, and there's the same education accessibility. Thank you. So I'd like to open up to questions. We had lots of questions about parent care reforms last time and around how they work within their systems. So does anybody have, I know we've got a few parent carers on here. I saw their names pop up, but does anybody have any questions? Aisha, I hope I've pronounced that right.
Close enough, we'll go for it.
Sorry, I apologise for getting it wrong.
It's fine, it's Aisha.
Sorry.
So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things, first of all, really, that we've done a lot with children and young people around the improvement plan, the change programme, etc. And minimum standards was something that young people completely agree with parent care reforms. It's needed. It must happen, because there is so much variation across what people, children, young people, get in each area. So it's great that that was agreed. And one of the other real key points from children and young people was in your little box on the bottom, I think you called it wider outcomes. Mm-hmm. That independence and community inclusion and those sorts of things they're so important to young people, and the fact that it's important to parents and carers as well is great. And that's one of the things that the collective, we call them, are hoping to do some work alongside parent carer forums both through the NNPCF and in local areas through their own parent carer forums and then the children and young people's forums, around kind of those top tips for living independently, because it's great that everyone is sharing information and these things will work and that will work, but nobody's sharing it with young people, so they're not learning. And one of the comments at our recent get together was around this idea that everyone's doing stuff for us, but if you actually help us to learn these skills and to do these things, it will help the system get better as well, and take pressure off the system. So yeah, I just wanted to point out that it's great that parents and carers and young people have some synergies in the thinking around how to make things better.
That's really lovely to hear, because I would never speak for children and young people, because we represent parent carers, and I think it's really important that the children and young people have their own separate voice within that. To offer you a little bit of reassurance, as part of my role with the co-chair, we sit on the SEND implementation board, and all of the partners around that are very keen to make sure that national standards are there, and that we all understand what good looks like, and that there is equity across the system. So that's really, really important. And I don't know any of the partners that aren't in agreement with that. And it's lovely to hear that the children and young people are really interested in that as well. And as you know, the parent carers that I know, we certainly want our children and young people to be as independent as possible, that they achieve as much as they possibly can, and they live independent lives as much as they possibly can, depending on their individual needs, because that's going to be unique for every young person. Oh, good, I got a heart. Lovely, thank you. Are there any other questions? Good. Carolyn. Oh no, sorry, you weren't number one. I've lost it. Samantha, are you number one? Samantha.
Yeah, hi. It's more of an observation than a question, really. And it's not to diminish the other workshops that are going on, but given the high numbers of attendance at the conference this morning when we were all together, I'm quite surprised by the low number in this workshop, given how critical this part of the system that the parent carer forum is, and that those relationships are, particularly at this point in time when we talk about, you know, confrontation, and it is an issue that lots of authorities speak to around those dysfunctional relationships, and they've come through so many written statements of action. So I'm just a bit surprised. I would have thought this would have
maybe it's the title. Maybe I got the title wrong. Maybe
yeah,
I
don't
give
know.
it a different title.
It was when I saw the list, I was, you know, this was, you know, my first choice, I think, in terms of the list of workshops today. So yeah, I was just surprised by that.
Yeah, maybe I should have, you know, it's hard to get the titles right for these things, because as the NNPCF, we like to represent the what we hear from our families, that lived experience, but we're also here to help support the system, understanding what parent care reforms are about and what they can and can't do type thing, and as well, and how they are important to helping with that strategic viewpoint as well. It's really important. So I'm happy to answer questions on that, but actually maybe I should have chosen a different title. Maybe that was why we didn't get the same level of interest, Samantha, and I will take that back and reflect on that. Thank you. Carolyn.
Hi, thanks. I wanted to bring together my last workshop that I attended, but again, just on that point, there weren't huge numbers there either, and I wonder if people have had to go back to other meetings rather than trying to give up the whole day for this. You know, not quite the whole day, but certainly a big portion of time. But anyway, my last one was about employment pathways, and one of the things that I raised there was about supported internships. And I work for a local authority where we have offered supported internships for several years. And then we doubled the number this year as part of the internships work programme that I know every local authority is part of. And we didn't get the numbers of young people. We just stayed with the same number of young people. So we ended up not being able to run both programmes from this September, which is such a shame. And I'm wondering what I'm doing wrong. Can I get help from the parent carer forums? What are your thoughts about why young people are not going on to supported internships in the numbers that we'd hoped?
I'll definitely work with your local parent care forum, because they will understand that what's going on in your area, and they will be able to provide you some input into maybe the potential barriers. It might be the types of internships, maybe. I mean, I don't know what's going on in your particular area, but I know that we've had some pushback locally because the young people don't want to go and do catering, for example, and there's a lot of catering and animal sort of husbandry type courses, and actually what they're coming back and saying, well, I'd quite like to do plumbing or a electrician, and it's those courses that are coming out. So it's quite interesting to find out, and I'm sure you must have a youth group as well, hopefully, that you could tap into locally as well and see if you could do some work with them.
Yeah, I think from what I understand, I know I can only speak for kind of like the London region, is that recruitment to supported internships, people are finding it quite difficult to get young people into that. And I mean, part of my worry is that we're not starting early enough in schools, and we're not getting, the careers leads or whoever they are now, don't really seem to be pushing it in schools. I talk to schools a lot, and they don't really seem to have supported internships on their radar yet. So it's quite disappointing. But I think I've got more work to do.
Do you have like a PFA event, or locally we
Yes,
call ours
yeah,
the
this
local
is
offer
our
live?
second one coming up. Yeah, we have over 200 young people at it last year, and we will, hopefully more again this year.
And what do the young people feed back to you at that event? Are they excited?
They are
by
really
these
interested. Yeah, they're really interested in supported internships. But I take your point in terms of vocational profiling, and maybe that we need to look at what are the young people telling us through their vocational profiles. So maybe it's a case of trying to tap into them more to find out exactly in which areas they want them. We offered places within the council as well as in our local hospital, and as I said, we just didn't get the take.
And you can also work with your Parent Carer Forum. They can help advertise things and send it out to their families so that they're aware of what the offers are as well. It's local offers are great, but they can be a bit hit and miss depending on your area, on how much they're used.
Yeah, and we talked about in terms of barriers with our Parent Carer Forum about how much the benefits issue comes up for families as well, and how that can be a problem, and that understanding of the fact that the longer term impact of work and how that can help, but there can be short term, especially within a cost of living crisis. Families are concerned about losing benefits too.
Yes, and sometimes transport can be a bit of a barrier as well to accessing internships, depending on where they're located. That might also be something to consider. I've just got Solihull Parent Carer Forum. I don't actually have a name.
Just quickly, Aisha, was your question to Sarah or Carolyn? What local area are you from?
Yeah, it was Carolyn.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Sarah. Sorry, it's Heather from Solihull. Just on the point about supported internships, one of the things that we found here is that partly it's a lack of understanding and information. So, schools are very much talking about sixth form colleges, other colleges, whereas the other options, the supported internships and traineeships, don't really seem to be talked about very much. So part of it is a lack of understanding, but part of it is a fear, because obviously with having to give up, as it were, your EHCP, part of it is a fear that if the supported internship fails, what then for the young person? So I think that's the bit that really needs talking about and focusing on.
So it might be good to have something that talks about pathways and kind of beyond. So obviously we have our percentages, 60, 70% in theory, get a job, but we know that isn't actually always borne out in practice. So it's about, what next? That will be really helpful. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Christopher.
Hi. Just on sports internships, I just want to support the comments that are being made.
You're very faint, Christopher.
You need to put your thing down.
That's better, thank you.
Oh, sorry about that. I have been drinking a cup of coffee. Despite tough. No, I was just going to really confirm the comments previously about supporting internships. And I mean, I think there's a lack of understanding what they are. I mean, they are relatively new. I mean, the concept of apprenticeships, traineeships have been around for a very long time, but this is a very specific type. So it's not well known. I think in our special schools in Nottinghamshire, they are known, but I think in mainstream settings, they would be lost amongst other things. As head teachers throw away the FE brochures, so they can't find out about FE colleges and things like that. So I don't. But I think it's also building that trust up with parents and carers about the implications, and as one of the previous people sort of said, the long-term benefits of securing experience of work at an early age, rather than going through a period of further education, further education, further education, and then struggling to get a foothold in the labour market. So I think there's a lot of work, and we probably just need to, as local authorities, local areas, we need to work with parent carer forums on trying to work out how we develop that trust and understanding. And for some, you know, the costs involved will be a breaking point, but for others, you know, there may be, you know, the young people will still be entitled to some of their benefits, not all of them, and that, you know, different families will find themselves in different situations. But I think it's that long-term potential of supported internship. But some of them are with employers that will provide opportunities for full-time employment and potentially very long-term employment. You know, we're part of the project search with hospitals and things like that, and you know, it's an area where employment will always be. We've been badly affected by COVID as well, so there's an element of this labour market is sorting itself out. So I think some of the opportunities that were there that were looking very promising have disappeared, but there'll be others as well. And you know, we still have a very tight labour market, so it's a good opportunity for people who might otherwise be disadvantaged of accessing employment opportunities. But I think there's an opportunity to work with parent carers around that trust and greater understanding.
And your local forum will understand where the trust issues are and be able to help you strengthen those and support communication with your families. It's really important. They generally have got their ear to the ground, and they are very proactive in supporting this sorts of work. PFA is a big big topic. Do we have any other questions? Any other questions about some of the other workshops you've been to? Because I've not been to any of them, so I'd be interested to hear. Joanne?
Hi, it's just a bit of a comment really, whether you've got any advice around it. In different roles that I've had in different authorities, I've found some differences in the relationships with parent carer forums and the local authorities, but also with the parents. And sometimes some parents not wanting to be a member of the local forum because they do not feel that their child is represented. It may be that their child has got more complex needs, and then the leaders are more able-bodied children, where they're talking about apprenticeships and not those sort of things and employment, whereas their child severe multiple disabilities and don't see that they're being represented in the wider forum, and what your advice would be around that.
Well, I think, you know, as local authorities vary, so do your parent care forums. We're all at different stages of our journey of involvement. Some are really new, some are very well established. And I think the pushback would be probably for me would be to a local authority. How are you supporting that forum into expanding its membership? There are things that the forums do really well, and there are some, you know, that they struggle with, and there are some areas that they might even have difficulties accessing it in terms of capacity as well. So depending on how that forum is structured, they're parent carers as well, and foremost, you know, we always have the motto family comes first, so they're doing this as an additional to their caring needs, and it can be very difficult to access certain cohorts and to get them to come to the table. So some of the things that we do locally, for example, I don't do it anymore. We used to put an advert in the borough news that would go to every single household, so that we knew that it would reach every household. Things that we also do, like we do an annual survey. And one of the bits that we're really proud of locally is that only a third of the people that respond to that survey are actually our members, but the messages are the same. And I think it's really important that we do have our ears to the ground, no matter how big or small we are. But, you know, we are there to collate themes, and some of our parent carers sometimes feel that you're there to answer individual problems and help resolve individual cases, which you're not. And I guess, you know, often you can be very autism heavy or ADH heavy, depending on what's going on in your area, and not necessarily some of the more complex needs. And it can also be difficult to access those that are 0 to 5 because they don't yet understand the needs of their child yet, or they're still, you know, diagnoses are coming out and the issues are developing. So, you know, we work with our early years providers as well, and it's helping to support that forum to grow and build that resilience, I guess, within them. There are mechanisms which they can use to support. So you've got our regional reps who, you know, will help support forums as well. We've got our contact advisors as well. So there is a network around the forums that sometimes they don't always know about or aren't able to access. So it's just around supporting them and helping them to maintain that. But I would say there is a big difference, and we talked about this in the last workshop, around parental engagement and parent carer forums. So what we are really good at as forums is we collate those themes and we input those at a strategic level, whereas parental engagement is often around individual cases reliving often quite traumatic experiences. And I used the CAM service as an example earlier around running workshops for those families who weren't able to access CAMs when they were in crisis, and how traumatic that was for those families to relive that. But whereas if you're working with your parent care forum, they already understand those themes and they're not forcing families to relive trauma, but they're able to input at a strategic level about what the solution focused, you know, results are going to be for those particular cohorts. So I think there's a massive difference between, you know, broad parental engagement and what the forum brings at a strategic level. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I would agree. I think I suppose it's somewhere if they do not feel that they're being represented, whether it is on an individual level or not, and then you find that you've got sort of offshoots, parents forming their own groups, which if that's their support network, it's fine. But then I suppose if they're not the recognised group for the area,
well,
then
it's tricky. So the forums, their remit isn't a support group, and that's the other thing. It's you know, we have quite a tight remit. We do offer support, but it's not a, you know, we're not a send yes service as such. So it's getting the balance between that, and it will depend how your forum is set up, what funding they get, whether they get additional funding, you know, what's their structure like, what's their capacity like, what's the need of the local area. I mean, there are so many variables. And it's really important to sort of bear that in mind, I think. But there are, you know, we do recommend that if you can get your parent carer forum to, you know, partake in participation training for their reps, so that they understand it's a message around solution focus and themes and not individual cases. But we do also often get asked by local authorities and other partners around, you know, who is having this issue, give us examples about how this has gone wrong, why has that gone wrong. So it's getting that balance between providing you the lived examples that you can understand why families are saying this, and keeping it on a theme base.
Thank you.
How are we doing for time, Ben? I can't remember what time we finish.
But just under 10 minutes.
Okay, lovely. Yeah. So did anybody else have any other questions that I can help with? Someone's typing.
Mm-hmm. A few people needing to go.
Yeah. Sarah,
yes,
I'll ask a question then.
Go for it.
So you're the southeast. Where I can't remember where in the southeast.
Yes, so I know. Yes, I'm in the southeast. And Wokingham.
Wokingham, that was it. I do remember. Sorry. Portsmouth is one of them, and in the change program session earlier, people were asking about how people are linking up, and Portsmouth, we've got quite a few young people who work with us that are in Portsmouth, and I just wondered if you knew what their change program element that they are trying and testing is, and if they'll be engaging young people from across the area.
It's still in its early stages. I actually haven't heard. I believe I'm meant to be sitting on the steering group for it. I have made contact with the lead at Portsmouth, but as yet I haven't. It's on my to-do list, to be perfectly honest. I don't know what area they're going to focus on, because it's for each steering group to come together. But I know Portsmouth have a very active parent care forum, and I'm sure that they would welcome the young person's voice as well, because I'm sure that they have quite a good voice. I've forgotten what it's called in Portsmouth. Can you remind me? Hasn't it?
Dynamite.
There is a youth group, quite a strong youth group in
Yeah,
Portsmouth.
it's Dynamite.
Dynamite, yes, I've heard of them before. So there are a lot in the southeast that have actually tried to replicate the Dynamite format as well, to ensure that the voice of young people is heard. So it's a well-known and highly thought of young voice. Oh, I can see another question. Any other questions?
Please do fill in the feedback form if you need to head off. Great to get people's thoughts on the overall event, and also Sarah's session now. I feel if we're losing a few people, then we should really thank Sarah for your.
I imagine a lot of people
workshop.
have got a meeting at 1:30 and need a comfort break before then, or something to eat.
Yeah, but yeah,
then
yes.
the feedback form that you've sent is the Future of the SEND System one.
Yeah.
Does that cover all? Because we didn't get after our first session, we didn't get a feedback link. So does that cover all?
It should cover all. Yes, we were only meant to share it at the end of the day.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to double check. Thank you, and
That's
thank you very much, Sarah.
Oh, lovely to meet you. Take care. Okay, yeah, numbers are dwindling fast, so it's probably time to close the session. Thank you, everybody. It was really lovely to chat to everybody.
Thank you, Sarah. Really,
Thank you.
Really smashed it twice in a row.
Thank you very much.
Have a lovely break. Bye.
Bye.